A father-in-law's secret visit destroyed his son's marriage forever. Daniel Carter saw his father enter his house at 10:47 p.m. That was the first strange thing. The second was that Richard Carter did not ring the doorbell. He walked beneath the yellow porch light with his shoulders squared, his gray hair neatly combed, his dark coat buttoned against the Tennessee wind. He stopped at the back door, looked once toward the driveway, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a key. Daniel sat upright in his hotel bed, staring at his phone. The security app had sent him a motion alert. He had expected to see a raccoon, a delivery truck, or maybe the neighbor's teenager cutting across the yard again. Instead, on the screen, he watched his father unlock the back door of the house Daniel shared with his wife. Richard stepped inside. The door closed behind him. Daniel checked the timestamp again. 7:47 p.m. His wife, Claire, had not mentioned Richard coming over. His father had not called. Daniel was in Memphis for a 2-day business meeting connected to the Carter family construction company. Claire was supposed to be home alone, maybe asleep already, maybe reading in the living room like she often did when Daniel traveled. Daniel stared at the dark rectangle of the back door. Then he texted Claire, "Why is Dad at the house?" 3 minutes passed, then 5, then 9. Finally, Claire replied, "He just stopped by to drop something off. Nothing important." Daniel looked at the message. Nothing important. His father had used a spare key to enter his house late at night while he was away, and his wife called it nothing important. Daniel opened the live camera feed. The back door remained closed. No movement. Richard stayed inside for nearly 2 hours. When he finally left, he walked out alone, face tight, jaw set, carrying an envelope he had not brought in with him. Claire did not come to the door. She did not wave goodbye. She did not turn on the porch light after him. Daniel watched his father get into his black Lincoln and drive away. Then he called Claire. She did not answer. He called again. No answer. At 1:08 a.m., she texted, "I'm tired. We'll talk tomorrow. Please don't worry." But Daniel was already worried, not because he suspected the whole truth yet. No one's mind reaches betrayal all at once when the people involved are the two people he trusts most. He only knew that something had happened inside his house, something his wife would not explain, something his father had no right to hide. And by morning, Daniel had changed his flight. He was going home early. The Carter family name meant something in Franklin, Tennessee, not in a famous way, not the kind of name on buildings downtown or whispered in political rooms, but in the steady local way that matters in small communities, church committees, business contracts, charity auctions, school boards, hospital fundraisers, family reputations built over decades of showing up, donating, shaking hands, and never letting dirty laundry flap where neighbors could see it. Richard Carter had built that name. He started Carter & Sons Construction with 1 truck, 2 workers, and a stubborn refusal to fail. By the time Daniel was 35, the company had grown into one of the most respected family-owned construction firms in the county. Richard was proud of that. Too proud, Claire used to say. Daniel never knew how to answer when she said it, because pride was complicated in his family. Richard had worked himself half to death to give his children security. He had paid for Daniel's college. He had helped Daniel and Claire with the down payment on their first house. He had taught Daniel how to read contracts, manage crews, negotiate with developers, and never make a promise the Carter name could not keep. He had also taught Daniel that love could sound like command. Family comes first. Never embarrass your name. Handle problems inside the house. People respect strength, not excuses. Daniel grew up believing his father was hard, because life had made him hard. Richard had buried his own father young, supported his mother, built a business from nothing, and carried himself like every room was a job site that needed supervision. He loved Daniel. Daniel knew that. But Richard's love often arrived as control, a suggestion that was not really a suggestion, a warning disguised as advice, a favor that came with invisible ownership. Claire saw it before Daniel did. "Your father doesn't visit," she once said. "He inspects." Daniel had laughed. "He's just like that." That's what people say when they're tired of challenging someone. They had been married 8 years then, still young enough to argue and make up before bed. Claire had stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes bright with frustration. "He has a key to our house, Daniel, for emergencies. He used it yesterday because he didn't like waiting on the porch. He was dropping off paperwork. He walked into our home while I was in pajamas." Daniel remembered feeling defensive. He didn't mean anything by it. Claire's face softened sadly. "You always say that. He doesn't mean anything by it. But somehow, what he wants always happens." Daniel had dismissed it then. Now, sitting on a flight home after watching his father use that same key at 10:47 p.m., he wondered how many warnings he had called complaints simply because they required him to confront Richard. Claire Carter had not meant to become a woman with secrets. That was what she told herself at first. She had married Daniel because he was different from the men who had hurt her before. He was steady, gentle in private, loyal and honest almost to a fault. He did not make dramatic promises. He made practical ones and kept them. When they were dating, he once drove 90 minutes in the rain to bring her a spare key after she locked herself out of her apartment. He arrived soaked, holding the key and a bag of soup because she had mentioned earlier that she felt sick. That was Daniel. Not flashy, not poetic, present. At least, he had been. Marriage into the Carter family changed the shape of him. The business grew. Richard pulled Daniel deeper into management. Family dinners became business briefings. Holidays became opportunities for Richard to discuss expansion, contracts, staffing problems, and reputation. Claire often felt like she had married Daniel and inherited a board of directors. Richard commented on everything: the paint color they chose for their house, the church they attended, the car Claire drove. When they should have children, why Claire's part-time design work was nice, but not necessary. How Daniel should spend weekends. Which family events were mandatory. Daniel pushed back sometimes, but rarely enough. He means well, he would say. Claire began to hate that sentence. Over the years, Daniel became busier, more tired, more trapped between being a husband and being Richard Carter's son. He still loved Claire, but he brought less of himself home. When she complained about Richard, Daniel heard criticism of the father he admired. When she complained about loneliness, he heard another problem he did not know how to solve. So Claire stopped complaining. Silence entered the marriage slowly. Then Ryan Cole re-entered her life. He was not an ex exactly, though he could have become one if timing had been different. He and Claire had been close in college, a friendship charged with almost romance that never fully became a relationship. Ryan had been funny, artistic, restless. He once told Claire she was too alive to become someone's polite wife in a family portrait. She had laughed then. Years later, when he messaged her after seeing her name attached to a local design fundraiser, the line returned: "Claire Carter, please tell me you're still too alive for family portraits." She should have ignored it. Instead, she smiled. That smile was the first crack. At first, Ryan was only someone who remembered her before Richard Carter's shadow covered so much of her life. They met for coffee after a fundraiser. Then again, then lunch. Claire told herself Daniel would not care. Ryan was an old friend. There was nothing wrong with talking to someone who knew her before marriage, before Carter expectations, before the family business swallowed every dinner conversation. But she did not tell Daniel. That made it wrong before anything physical happened. Ryan listened in the way lonely people crave. When Claire said Richard controlled too much, Ryan did not say, "He means well." He said, "That sounds exhausting." When she said Daniel never defended their marriage strongly enough, Ryan said, "Maybe he's still more son than husband." When she said she felt guilty because Daniel was a good man, Ryan said, "Good men can still fail women." Those sentences felt like oxygen. They were also dangerous. Ryan did not create the wound. He pressed on it until Claire associated his touch with relief. The first kiss happened in Ryan's parked car after a late coffee meeting. Rain moved down the windshield. Claire had been crying about a family dinner, where Richard criticized her for wanting to take a weekend trip with Daniel instead of attending a company event. Ryan touched her cheek. "You deserve to be chosen," he said. Claire whispered, "Don't." But she did not move away. When she came home that night, Daniel was asleep on the couch, his laptop still open, a spreadsheet glowing blue across the screen. Claire stood over him and felt such a mixture of love, pity, resentment, and guilt that she had to leave the room. The affair became physical 2 weeks later. Afterward, Claire sat in her car and shook so hard she could not drive for 10 minutes. She told herself it would never happen again. Then it did. And every time she returned home, the house looked less like safety and more like accusation. She tried to end it. Ryan did not make that easy. "You don't want to end it," he said. "I have to. Because of Daniel? Because I'm married." "Were you married when you told me you felt invisible?" Claire slapped him then. He apologized. She cried. They held each other. The affair survived another week. Then Richard found out. Richard Carter did not discover Claire's affair because he was looking for it. He discovered it because he was always looking for weakness. A subcontractor's wife saw Claire and Ryan leaving a hotel bar outside Nashville. She recognized Claire from a Carter family charity event and mentioned it to her husband. Her husband mentioned it to a site supervisor. The site supervisor, loyal to Richard, brought it to him quietly. Richard did not confront Daniel. He confronted Claire. The first time he visited, it was a Wednesday afternoon when Daniel was at work. Claire opened the door and found Richard on the porch, holding a manila envelope. Her stomach tightened immediately. "Richard, Daniel isn't home." "I know." She did not like that. "Then maybe you should call him. I'm here to speak with you." He stepped inside without waiting for permission. That was Richard. Claire closed the door slowly. He placed the envelope on the kitchen island. "Open it." Her hands went cold. Inside were printed photos. Blurry, but clear enough. Claire walking beside Ryan outside the hotel bar. Ryan's hand at the small of her back. Another photo of them standing too close near his car. Claire felt the floor tilt. Richard watched her face. "How long?" She gripped the counter. Do not insult me." His voice was calm, which made it more frightening. "How long?" Claire began crying. Richard's face hardened, not with compassion but calculation. "My son does not know." She shook her head. "You will end it." "I know. You will end it today." "I was going to." "I don't care what you were going to do. You will do it before this becomes public." Claire looked at him through tears. "You have to tell Daniel." Richard leaned forward. "No, you have to make sure there is nothing to tell." She stared at him. "What does that mean?" "It means you made a filthy mistake, and you will clean it before it ruins my son, this family, and the business." Claire recoiled. "Your son deserves to know. My son deserves not to be humiliated because his wife couldn't control herself." The cruelty landed hard. Richard continued, "You think confession is noble? Confession is often selfish. It dumps guilt on someone else so you can feel clean." Claire had no answer. Not because he was right, because she wanted him to be. She wanted any argument that allowed her to avoid seeing Daniel's face when he found out. So she let Richard take control. That was her next betrayal. Not of Ryan, of Daniel. She allowed his father to decide how much truth he deserved. Richard visited 3 more times. Once at the house, once at a quiet parking lot behind the Carter office, once late at night while Daniel was away visiting a job site. Each time, Richard grew more controlling. "Did you end it? Has he contacted you? Did anyone else see you? Delete the messages. Do not tell Daniel unless you want to destroy him." He said he was protecting his son. Claire began to understand he was protecting the Carter name. There was a difference. The 4th visit was the one Daniel saw on camera. By then, Claire had ended things with Ryan, or tried to. Ryan kept texting. He threatened to call Daniel. Richard found out because he had demanded Claire show him the messages. That night, Richard arrived with a new envelope. Claire met him in the living room, terrified. "You cannot keep coming here," she whispered. "I can if you keep failing to handle this." "I ended it." Richard threw the envelope onto the coffee table. "Then why is he still writing to you?" Inside were screenshots Claire had printed under Richard's orders. Ryan's messages, her replies. Proof of emotional and physical betrayal. Hotel receipts. Dates. Enough to destroy every lie. Claire sobbed. "I can't do this anymore." Richard stood over her. "Then tell Daniel." She looked up, startled. He slid a folded note across the table. On it, in his handwriting, were 6 words. "Tell Daniel before I do." Claire stared at it. Richard said, "You have until Friday." "Friday? I will not let this sit in my family another week." "Your family," Claire whispered. His eyes narrowed. "What?" "You keep saying your family, your name, your business, your son. What about his heart?" Richard's jaw tightened. "If I did not care about his heart, I would have told him immediately." "No," Claire said, tears falling. "If you cared about his heart, you wouldn't have made yourself the keeper of it." Richard slapped his hand on the table so hard she flinched. "You lost the right to lecture me about care." The room went silent. He took the envelope back, then seemed to reconsider and left it on the table. "Friday," he said. Then he left. Daniel texted minutes later. "Why was my father at the house tonight?" Claire looked at the envelope. At the note. At the door. Then she lied again. "He just stopped by to drop something off." Nothing important. Daniel arrived home before noon the next day. Claire was in the kitchen when he came in. She turned too fast. "You're home." He set his bag down. "Yesh. I thought you weren't back until tomorrow." "So did you." The words hung between them. Claire's face palled. Daniel looked around the kitchen, then toward the living room. Where is it? What? Whatever he dropped off. Claire gripped the counter. Daniel, my father entered our house at 10:47 last night. He stayed almost 2 hours. You told me it was nothing important. So where is the nothing? Claire began crying. That confirmed more than any answer. Daniel felt something cold open inside him. Claire, I wanted to tell you. Then tell me. She shook her head. I don't know how. He took a step back. Is this about him? Her eyes widened. My father. No. The answer came quickly, but not falsely. Daniel's suspicion shifted. Then who? Claire covered her mouth. The front door opened before she could answer. Richard Carter walked in. No knock. No doorbell. Just the spare key turning in the lock. Daniel turned slowly. His father stepped into the foyer, saw Daniel, and stopped. For the first time Daniel could remember, Richard looked caught. Daniel stared at him. You still think this is your house? Richard's face hardened. I came to speak with Claire. I can see that. Claire wiped her tears. Daniel, please. He did not look away from his father. How many times? Richard said, This is not the way to handle this. Daniel laughed once. No, apparently the way to handle it is sneaking into my house while I'm away. Richard stepped closer. Lower your voice. Something in Daniel snapped. No. Richard froze. Daniel had never said no to his father like that before. Not as a boy. Not as a man. Not like this. Daniel pointed toward the living room. Both of you sit down. Richard's eyes flashed. I don't take orders in my son's house. Daniel stepped closer. Then leave your key on the table and get out. The silence that followed was enormous. Claire began sobbing softly. Richard looked at his son, then slowly removed the spare key from his keyring and placed it on the entry table. But he did not leave. He walked into the living room. For once, Daniel followed him not as a son obeying a father, but as a man entering the truth of his own life. The envelope was hidden in Claire's desk drawer. Daniel found it because Richard glanced at the desk when Daniel asked what he had brought. It was only a split second, but Daniel saw. He crossed the room and opened the drawer before either of them could stop him. The manila envelope lay beneath a stack of stationery. Daniel pulled it out. Claire stood. Daniel, wait. He opened it. Photos. Screenshots. Receipts. Ryan Cole's name. Claire's messages. Dates when Daniel had been away. A hotel bar. A room charge. A printed note in Richard's handwriting. Tell Daniel before I do. Daniel stared at the contents. The room seemed to tilt. Not violently. Slowly, like the foundation of his life had begun sinking beneath him. He recognized Ryan from old conversations, charity events, a photograph Claire once showed him from college. A friend, she had said, almost something once, but not anymore. Not anymore. Daniel sat down because his legs felt unreliable. Claire was crying openly. Richard stood near the fireplace, jaw clenched, face unreadable. Daniel held up one of the screenshots. How long has he known? Claire whispered. 3 weeks. Daniel looked at Richard. You knew for 3 weeks. Richard said nothing. Daniel's voice was quiet. You knew my wife was having an affair and you did not tell me. Richard finally spoke. I was trying to stop it before it destroyed you. Daniel looked at the envelope. It destroyed me anyway. You just made sure I was the last one to know. Richard's face tightened. You don't understand what was at stake. Daniel laughed. It sounded broken. My marriage? The family? The business? Your reputation? My reputation? If this got out. Daniel stood suddenly. If this got out? He repeated. You're standing in my living room with proof that my wife betrayed me? Proof that you've been secretly meeting her? And you're worried about gossip? Richard's voice rose. I was protecting you. No, Daniel said. You protected the family name. You left your son living inside a lie. Claire covered her face. Richard's eyes hardened. You think you could have handled this cleanly? It was not yours to handle. I am your father. Daniel stepped closer, trembling. And I am her husband. That sentence silenced the room. For the first time, Daniel understood the full shape of the betrayal. Claire had let another man into their marriage. Richard had let himself become the gatekeeper of Daniel's truth. Ryan had taken what was not his. Claire had lied. Richard had managed. And Daniel had lived inside a house where everyone knew more about his marriage than he did. Claire confessed that afternoon. Not all at once. Truth rarely comes out clean when it has been hidden too long. She told him about Ryan's message. The coffee. The conversations. The kiss. The hotel. the attempts to end it, Richard's first visit, the photos, the threats, the pressure, the lie from the night before. Daniel listened without interrupting. His stillness frightened her. When she finished, he asked one question. Did you love him? Claire closed her eyes. I thought he saw me. That's not what I asked, she cried silently. I don't know. Daniel nodded once. That was worse than no. Then he turned to his father. And you? Did you ever plan to tell me? Richard folded his arms. If she ended it and no one else knew, what good would telling you do? Daniel stared at him. It would have made my life real. Richard scoffed. It would have broken your marriage. Daniel looked at Claire, then at the envelope. It was already broken. Richard said, I was trying to save it. No, Daniel said. You were trying to save the appearance of it. Richard's face flushed. Do not speak to me like I'm your enemy. Daniel's voice cracked. Then stop acting like my owner. Claire looked up. Richard looked as if Daniel had struck him. Daniel continued. My wife betrayed my marriage, but my father betrayed my right to know the truth. The words entered the room and stayed there. No one argued, because no one could. Richard left first. Before he walked out, he said, You'll regret pushing away the only person trying to protect you. Daniel looked at him. I regret letting you teach me protection meant control. Richard's hand tightened around the doorknob. Then he left. The spare key remained on the entry table. Daniel and Claire were alone. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Claire whispered, I'm sorry. Daniel closed his eyes. For which part? She sobbed. All of it. No, he said. Say it. She wiped her face, shaking. I'm sorry for Ryan, for the affair, for lying, for letting your father know before you, for letting him come here, for being afraid of the truth and calling it protection. Daniel sat down slowly. I failed you too. Claire looked startled. No, Daniel. I did. I let my father stand too close to our marriage. I dismissed you when you told me. I chose peace with him over honesty with you. Tears rolled down her face. But, he continued, that did not make you betray me. I know, and it did not make you let my father decide what I deserved to know. I know. He looked around the living room. Their wedding photo sat on a shelf near the fireplace. He could barely look at it. You both stood inside my house with secrets, he said quietly, and somehow I was the last person in my own family to know. Claire bowed her head. There was no answer for that. The truth came out at a family dinner because Richard could not leave control alone. 3 days after the confrontation, Daniel's mother, Margaret, called and begged him to come to Sunday dinner. Your father is worried, she said. Daniel almost laughed. Worried about me or worried I'll embarrass him? Margaret was quiet. That answered enough. Daniel went because he wanted his mother to hear the truth from him, not Richard's edited version. Claire came too, pale and silent, because Daniel asked her to. Richard sat at the head of the table as always. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans. The same family dining room where Daniel had celebrated birthdays, holidays, promotions, and company milestones. Everything looked normal. That made Daniel angry. Richard said grace. His voice did not shake once. Afterward, he began speaking about difficult seasons and family unity, and not letting private pain become public destruction. Daniel set down his fork. No. Everyone looked at him. Margaret's face tightened with fear. Richard's eyes narrowed. Daniel looked around the table at his mother, his younger sister Anna, Claire, and his father. Everyone in this family knows how to protect the Carter name, he said. No one knew how to protect my heart. Claire began crying. Margaret whispered, Daniel. He looked at his mother gently. Dad knew Claire had an affair before I did. Anna gasped. Richard stood. That is enough. Daniel stood too. No. Enough was when you walked into my house with a key and kept my marriage under your management. Richard's face darkened. I was trying to keep this family from shame. Daniel nodded. Yes, shame. Not pain, not truth, shame. Margaret began to cry. Richard pointed at Claire. She brought this into our family. Claire flinched but did not defend herself. Daniel looked at his father. And you made sure it stayed hidden in it. The room went silent. Daniel pushed back his chair. I'm leaving the company. Richard froze. What? I'll finish the current projects cleanly. Then I'm done working under you. You're emotional. I'm finally clear. You would throw away your inheritance over this? Daniel looked at him. You used inheritance like a leash my whole life. Richard's face changed. For a moment, beneath the anger, Daniel saw fear, but it was too late. Daniel turned to his mother. I love you. I'm sorry this hurts. Then he looked at Claire. We should go. They left together, but not as husband and wife repaired. They left as two people standing in the wreckage of a truth that had arrived too late. Separation came quietly. Daniel moved into a small rental house near the edge of town. Claire stayed in their home temporarily, though Daniel could not understand why anyone would want to stay inside walls so full of secrets. She ended all contact with Ryan. This time, truly. She blocked him, changed her number, and sent one final message through email because he kept trying. What happened between us was betrayal. Do not contact me again. Ryan replied once. You ran back to the family that controlled you. Claire did not answer. For the first time, she understood that Ryan had never wanted her free in a healthy way. He wanted her free from Daniel, from Richard, from guilt, but not free from secrecy. He had offered escape, not truth. Claire began therapy. Daniel did too. In his first session, Daniel spoke more about Richard than Ryan. The therapist noticed. Your wife's affair hurt you deeply, she said, but your father's role seems to carry another kind of wound. Daniel nodded. Claire chose betrayal. I can understand that as something broken in her, in us, in the marriage. He paused. My father chose to decide whether I deserved reality. That was the deepest cut. Richard had treated Daniel like a boy who could not handle pain, a business asset to protect, a family heir to manage, not a man, not a husband, not the person most entitled to the truth. In counseling, Daniel began to see patterns everywhere. The spare key, the business decisions, the family dinners, the way Daniel had learned to wait for Richard's approval before trusting his own judgment. The marriage had been damaged by Claire's affair, but it had also been weakened by Daniel's failure to build walls around it. Richard had always had too much access to their home, their time, their choices, their conflicts, and now finally to their secrets. Claire wrote Daniel a letter 3 months after the separation. She did not ask for forgiveness. She had learned not to make her guilt his responsibility. Daniel, your father's visit did not destroy our marriage by itself. It only exposed how many secrets were already living here. I betrayed you with Ryan. That is mine to carry. I also allowed Richard to become the keeper of a truth that belonged to you. That may have been cowardice more than anything else. I was afraid of your pain, afraid of your anger, afraid of losing the life we had, and afraid of facing who I had become. I know now that hiding the truth did not protect you. It only left you alone in a lie. You deserve to know from me, not from a camera, not from an envelope, not from your father. I am sorry. Claire. Daniel read it in the small rental kitchen. He did not cry. Not then. He folded it and placed it in a drawer. Later that night, while washing a single plate in the sink, he broke down so suddenly he had to grip the counter. He had loved her. That was the cruel part. He still did in ways. But love had been buried under too many other things. Betrayal, humiliation, his father's control, the feeling of being the last adult allowed into his own marriage. Some things can be forgiven. Not all can be rebuilt. Richard did not apologize. Not at first. He sent messages through Margaret, then through Anna, then finally directly. You're making a mistake leaving the company. Daniel ignored it. You're letting your pain ruin your future. Daniel ignored that too. I did what I thought was best. One day you'll understand. Daniel replied, I understand now. That's why I left. For weeks, Richard said nothing. Daniel started his own small consulting firm, helping local contractors manage project logistics and bids. It was smaller than Carter & Sons, less prestigious, less stable. It was his. The first time he signed a contract without his father's approval, he sat in his truck afterward and laughed until his eyes filled. Freedom felt terrifying, but clean. Margaret visited him quietly. She brought food, as mothers do when they cannot fix what men have broken. Your father misses you, she said. Daniel looked down. He misses control. She sighed. He loves you. I know. He is proud. I know that too. Those things are tangled in him. Daniel nodded. They were tangled in me too. Margaret cried then. Not because he was cruel, because he was right. The divorce became final, a year after the doorbell alert. Daniel and Claire met one last time at the house before it sold. The rooms were mostly empty. Without furniture, the house looked strangely innocent. The living room no longer held the envelope. The kitchen no longer held Richard's voice. The back door no longer seemed like an entrance for secrets. It was just a door. Claire stood near the window, I used to hate that your father had a key, she said. Daniel looked at the entry table where the spare key had once been placed. I should have taken it back years ago. Yes, she said softly. He expected the word to anger him. It did not. It was true. Claire turned to him. I am sorry for Ryan. I know. I am sorry for Richard. Daniel looked at her. She corrected herself. I'm sorry I let him be part of it. I'm sorry I let your father know me as a guilty woman before I let you know me as a truthful one. His throat tightened. That may be the most honest thing you've said. Tears filled her eyes. It came too late. Yesh. They stood in the empty room with the kind of grief that no longer fought to change the outcome. Claire said, Do you think you'll ever forgive him? Daniel looked toward the back door. My father? She nodded. I don't know. And me? He closed his eyes. I hope so. She accepted that. Not because it was what she wanted. Because it was all he could truthfully give. Before leaving, Daniel deleted the old security footage from his phone. Claire watched him do it. Why now? She asked. He looked at the blank screen. Because I don't need to keep watching the moment I stopped being blind. Then he put the phone in his pocket and walked out of the house. Years passed. Daniel's business survived. Then grew. Not into an empire, but into something steady and honest. He hired people who respected boundaries. He did not answer calls during dinner unless something was truly urgent. He learned to say no without explaining himself 5 different ways first. Richard aged. Control did not leave him easily, but age softened some of its edges. 2 years after the divorce, he came to Daniel's office without an appointment. Daniel almost refused to see him. Then he opened the door. Richard looked smaller than Daniel remembered. Not weak. Just human. He held an envelope. Daniel stiffened. Richard noticed and looked ashamed. It's not like that. Daniel said nothing. Richard placed the envelope on the desk. Inside was a check for the amount Daniel had invested years earlier into Carter & Sons from his own savings. Daniel frowned. What is this? Yours. I didn't ask for it. I know. Richard sat slowly. For once, he did not command the room. I thought I was protecting you, he said. Daniel looked at him. I know you thought that. I was wrong. The words seemed physically painful for Richard. Daniel waited. Richard continued. I cared about the name. The business. What people would say. I told myself it was for you. Maybe some of it was, but not enough. Daniel felt something loosen and tighten at the same time. Richard's eyes were wet now. I should have told you, or made her tell you immediately. I should not have gone into your house. I should not have treated your marriage like a problem on my desk. Daniel looked away. For years, he had imagined this apology. Now that it was here, it did not repair the past, but it did enter the room as truth. Richard whispered, I lost my son trying to preserve my family. Daniel's jaw trembled. You didn't lose me completely. Richard looked up. No? No. Daniel took a breath. But you lost the version of me who lets you decide what truth I can handle. Richard nodded slowly. That is fair. It was the beginning of something. Not restoration. Not instantly, but something more honest than what they had before. Claire rebuilt her life quietly. She moved to Chattanooga, returned to design work, and stopped trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, wife, or wounded woman. She went to therapy for a long time. She learned that resentment is not a reason to betray. Loneliness is not a permission slip. Fear is not protection. She never married Ryan. She never even saw him again after the final email. Years later, she heard from a friend that he had moved to Florida. The news stirred nothing but a faint sadness for the woman she had been when she thought he represented freedom. He had not. Freedom was telling the truth before someone else found the envelope. Sometimes Claire drove past houses with doorbell cameras and felt a small chill, not because of being watched, because she remembered how truth had once appeared through a lens while Daniel sat alone in a hotel room, still trusting her. She carried that knowledge without trying to decorate it. It became part of her. A scar, not a costume. Daniel eventually began dating again, slowly, carefully. A woman named Rebecca, a school administrator, entered his life through a community project. She was direct, kind, and allergic to family drama. On their 5th date, Daniel told her the outline of his divorce. Not every detail. Enough. My father knew before I did, he said. Rebecca listened. Then she asked, Do you trust yourself now? The question surprised him. He expected questions about Claire, Richard, the affair. More than I used to, he said. Good, she replied. Because I don't want to date your father's voice in your head. Daniel laughed for the first time that evening. It was not a cure, but it was a sign. Life after betrayal was not the same as life before. It could still be life. On the anniversary of the doorbell alert, many years later, Daniel sat on the porch of his new home. No Carter family business papers. No spare keys in other people's pockets. No house full of hidden envelopes. His phone buzzed with a security notification. For a moment, his body remembered before his mind did. He opened it. A delivery driver had dropped a package at the wrong door. That was all. Daniel looked at the image and exhaled. Then he smiled faintly. The camera had not destroyed his marriage. The footage had not created Claire's affair. The notification had not broken his family. It had only shown him the door through which secrecy had entered. The rest had already happened in silence. He set the phone down and watched the evening settle over the yard. He thought of Claire with sadness, not hatred. He thought of Richard with caution, not obedience. He thought of the man he had been, loyal, trusting, too willing to let his father define strength. Then he thought of the man he was becoming. Still wounded, still learning, but his own. The lesson remained with him, simple and hard. A family can survive painful truth, but it rarely survives secrets protected in the name of love. When a father hides betrayal to preserve a family's image, he may save appearances for a moment, but he can lose his son's trust forever.